PSS. And up next, we have the CNMI public school system. Just want to express our appreciation for their understanding and rescheduling what was initially scheduled for Monday. And so we are here today to hear out some of the requests by the public school system. While PSS is already mandated to receive 25%, there have been several additional allocations that were made to PSS to include local appropriations. In addition, in the current fiscal year, aside from the 25%, PSS was also given additional funds for textbooks as well as the give me 1 second here. As well as to conduct a feasibility study. And I know that PSS was here a couple weeks ago to discuss the status of that, but because this was funded through the general fund, I would like if PSS can also give an update to the members of this committee on the status of that study, we would appreciate it, as well as any additional funds in excess of the 25%, what those funds will be used for. In addition, I'm pulling it up right now. PSS was also given an additional funding for and this was through SNILD. It's for the CCLHS curriculum development, as well as funds to the Office of Instructions for storage space. So we would just like to see what the status of those, whether PSS has received those local funds as well. In addition, PSS has also made the request for additional positions that shall be allocated to the Chamorro Carolinian Language Heritage Studies program. Just to get an update of that, I know that's also a provision that was included in this fiscal year, Public Law 22-08. And so those are some of the requests that we would like to requests we're making to PSS to provide updates on those funding, as well as the additional requests PSS may have for us to consider and deliberate on for the upcoming fiscal year 2023. And so at this time, I would like to invite Commissioner Dr. Ada, and as well as any key management that will be answering any questions by the committee. And so at this time, I will hand the floor over to Dr. Ada. And so again, welcome and good afternoon. Commissioner, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Buenas tardes. No, Chairman Mangalonia, and to Representative Tina Sablan, good afternoon. Representative Babauta, buenas tardes, good afternoon. Representative Richard, good afternoon. um, Ms. Yangtamay, Representative Ms. Yangtamay, buenas tardes, good afternoon, and Representative um, Vicente Camacho, good afternoon. Representative Corina Magofnia, good afternoon to the legal counsel and the entire body of the chairs, Ways and Means. Sorry. I'd like to greet everyone and introduce. I brought our key management team of the CNMI public school system. With me, I have our senior director for office from the Office of the Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Jackie Kirua, our Director of Finance, Ms. Arlene Lizama, our Human Resource Office Director, Ms. Lucrecia De Longuerero, the Associate Commissioner for Administrative Services, Mr. Eric Magufnia, our Federal Programs Director, Mr. Tim Thornburg, and our Senior Director for Accountability, Research, and Evaluation, Ms. Dr. Rizalina Liwak. On behalf of the Board of Education and the CNMI Public School System, we present to you our board request for fiscal year 23. Facing a third year of the COVID-19 pandemic, PSS remains committed to improving the financial support of our schools and program. Our budget request is data-driven on PSS budget development process of staffing patterns, projected enrollment, school allocations, student services, and program assessments. The budget process has taken into account the CNMI's current economic condition, the public health measures including expanded remote learning, testing, and social distancing requirements. These are all essential services necessary to support our school system. Our team continues to work with government agencies in collaborating and coordinating services and programs for our schools. Based on the Secretary of Finance projected revenue resource for the general fund, PSS will receive an appropriate of the 25 million, the same as the current fiscal year. The appropriation allotted for direct funding for school operations are as follows. For personnel, 14 million. All others, 8.5 million. For utilities, 2.5. The America Rescue Plan Act funding, in addition to the general fund revenue, PSS also received financial support in fiscal year 23 from the federal ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funding. The ARPA funding is PSS's largest federal grant and a 4-year guaranteed funding of 160 million. For fiscal year 23, PSS will receive 67 million, of which 32 million will be allotted for personnel costs and 35 for all others. We hired additional teachers, school nurses, school health monitors, ELL teachers, and also we began our high dosage tutors program. Laptops and internet connectivity for every student at home, and replacement of school classroom furniture. Based of the Because of the pandemic, several programs will be funded for mental health counseling to our students. PSS also invests in the repairs and retrofitting of school facilities for the installments of ventilation system in compliance with the pandemic recovery plan. Because of ARPA, PSS was able to backfill a huge funding gap in the local budget, as the local personnel cost is 40 million. Yet, for the last 3 years, we have only received 19 million, 24 million, and 25 million respectively. The hiring of school nurses is a significant milestone as it was the first time in 30 years that PSS has employed nurses at its schools. Although the 23 budget is funded substantially by the ARPA funding and regular federal grants and general fund appropriation pursuant to Article 15, Section 1 of the Constitution, comprises an important part of PSS operations. The anticipated 25 million appropriate will cover staffing costs, required matching funds for programs, repairs and maintenance of school facilities, utilities, and other essential school operation. PSS acknowledge the full responsibility and the support of all stakeholders as it is essential. We present our budget request for fiscal year 23. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ada. As I mentioned earlier, if you can briefly provide updates as to that additional funds that were set aside for the um, feasibility study. Now, I know it was discussed during the Health and the Education Committee meeting, but as far as budget-related matters go, can you provide an update as to how that 50,000 was spent?
Um, so the CCLHS funding that was allotted for curriculum development was for the implementation of the immersion program.
Sorry,
Now,
we're talking about the local appropriation?
I'm sorry, local. Yes, yes,
Oh, I mean, no, I'm just clarifying because I mentioned feasibility, but then you
local.
were talking about the. That's one of the requests
Oh,
that I
was it
made,
feasible?
but
Okay, I'm going to yield to Miss Jackie. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Eric Magofnia. Mr. Eric Manglonia. I mean, sorry, Magofnia. Holy cow. Okay, it's Mr. Eric Magofnia, please. Please, over.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. So with regards to the feasibility study for Hopwood, PSS, we did not need to use the money that was allocated for the feasibility study. And the reason for this is because through the Public Assistance Office, they were able to do a relocation study on the 3 proposed properties for Hopwood Middle School. And so that study was done by Helios and its subcontractors, House Schneider Engineering and Guma Architects. And so what the A&E firm team did was they ranked the 3 sites based on socioeconomics, general population, utility and infrastructure, construction impact, and several more factors. And in the end, Asgono ranked number 1, Telempio ranked number 2, and Asperdido ranked number 3. So on March 25th, 2022, the Board of Education did meet and made the decision to keep Hopwood at its current location. So right now we are working with the Public Assistance Office to move forward with the design for Hopwood. I hope that answers your question.
so you have not spent the 50,000.
Not for the feasibility study, no.
Thank you for that update. And in regards to the local appropriation by the SNILE,
I'm going to yield to Miss Jackie Kiruga, our Senior Director.
Buenos dias, Tiro, to all our distinguished leaders. Regarding the SNIOD funding, we have not yet received any of it. And you mentioned the intention to develop our own CCLHS or Chamorro Carolinian Language Heritage textbook and our social studies textbook. We are more and more called to bring indigenous-based learning, and in doing so, it's appropriate that we develop our own resources to get this going. But we have not received any funding yet.
Was any request made by Commissioner or Finance? PSS Finance?
No, not yet.
Okay.
No.
All right, yeah, well, so we're now understanding why some local appropriations haven't been transferred over, and right now the practice is whoever is the recipient of these appropriations shall submit just a general request to get the funds transferred over. So if that hasn't happened, let us know and we'll assist in trying to get those funds to you.
Okay. So
You mentioned your annual cost for personnel is at 40 million on average,
yes,
and that's for the current fiscal year as well.
yes.
And what's your operational cost?
Oh, was that 2 million? What was it? One second. 8.5. 11 million. 11 million total. That's all others with utility.
So your total total expenditure for both personnel and operation is around 51 million.
No, it's 25. That's correct. Yes, that is correct.
And so you're saying that 67 million was allocated for this from ARPA, and then you have the 25 million from the general fund. So that's a total of 92 million
Yes,
for next fiscal year.
and that is correct.
And
Yes.
so you would be in excess of 41 million. Am I understanding that correctly?
Can I yield to our director of finance
Sure.
where she has a clearer?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Madam Director Lizana.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. For our operational costs, this request, we plugged in our total personal expense to be 46 million and our operational expenses at 11 million. So the local will cover 14 million plus the 11 million operational costs to equal 25 million. The federal fund will cover the 32 million for fiscal year 2023 to complete our 92 million expenditure, which also includes the 35 million operational costs that's covered by the federal funding.
Your total operational costs, set aside general fund and federal funds, how much is your total personnel expense for the entire year?
46 million.
46. And then what's your all others expenditures for the entire year? 11 million, correct? So a total of 57 million just to operate the entire public school system.
That's correct.
Correct. And now 25 million is coming from the general fund,
Yes.
and then you have 67 from ARPA. So that's 92 million.
Yes.
So what's the remaining, what will the remaining funds be used for?
The remaining 35 million under federal fund will be used and managed by our federal funds programs office.
To cover,
And I can yield to our federal program officer for that.
Okay, that's going to cover school buses. We purchased a total of 15 school vans, new furniture at the schools, and then every year we're buying between 5,000 to 7,000 laptops. We're buying about 3,000 iPads and providing connectivity to every student who does not have connectivity at home, both public and private schools. So that gives you a.
so those are not included in this
What's
11
that?
million. Those expenses are not included in the 11 million.
No, not in the
Okay.
11 million, but you asked, the question was about federal programs. And I'm telling you on the ARPA, this is how we're using the money.
And
Did I
so
misunderstand your question?
bottom line is, how much will you be needing additional funds if you know what I'm saying? If 57 million is needed to operate the school and you're already going to be receiving 92 million in total, general fund and ARPA, will you be needing additional funds?
Okay, let me answer that very simply. We've got a 5-year plan here. 4 years are totally funded, and we've got things covered. Just we have for the past year, this year, and the next 2 years. So we've got our costs covered, and we're assuming that the local funding will remain at about the same level in the 25 to maybe hopefully a little bit higher in the future, maybe to 28 or so. But we realize until tourism comes back to pre-COVID numbers, the locally generated funds are going to be stretched very thin.
Okay. That still doesn't answer my question. Will
Okay, what-
PSS be needing additional funds from the 25% that's already going to PSS?
What I can say with absolute certitude is we should not be needing additional funds unless there is another super typhoon or some natural event that it just disrupts island life and the economy.
I'm going to add to what our federal officers mentioned. So in our personal budget, in this budget request, we only estimated 40 million in the local side. But that does not include about 103 new FTE requests, which we estimate to be 4 million. Based on the school's FTE requests, because we budgeted for 25 million local requests, we did not fund 103 personnel because the 25 million cannot cover it.
But can it be covered through the ARPA?
Based on our 5-year plan,
The
it
answer is yes.
it can.
Yes, we are covering it with ARPA.
It's not covered yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not covered yet under ARPA.
And it can't be covered. I mean, I'm trying to look at the difference here between the 57 and the 92.
Unless we do some major reprogramming on the current budget on ARPA, but that will be dependent when that happens.
So the excess of 35 million cannot cover the additional 102 FTEs.
Not with the current budget that was submitted to the USDOE.
And what does the 103 FTEs? What do those positions consist of?
I can yield to our HR director on the details.
Hi, good afternoon, members of the Ways and Means Committee. In response to that, out of 103 FTEs, 51 of those are certified positions, which are the most critical. That includes teachers, counselors, and our CCLHS or immersion instructors. The remaining 52 are non-certified requests from the schools, which are basically the support staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And before I hand the floor over to the members for their questions, just one last question that I was expecting an update on, and that's in regards to the gym. Is there any update on that request?
The request was for whether or not PSS or the Rhoda Mayor's office was responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of the Rhoda gym.
Yes.
Yes, so PSS, we do have an MOA with the Rhoda Mayor's office. And based on the MOA, the Rhoda Mayor's office is responsible for the gym, the maintenance and upkeep for that whole campus, except for the buildings that PSS is currently occupying, which is the JROTC building.
So any request for federal assistance, it would have to be the mayor that submits the request, not through PSS.
Based on the MOA, it would be the Rhoda Mayor's office. However, PSS does assist whenever we can, whenever we go down, whatever we can do to assist in the repairs and maintenance of the building, we do assist, we do help out.
Okay. But as part of the agreement, and just seeing the overall condition of it, has there been any discussion on what the steps are that the mayor is taking in order to rehabilitate the gym?
I'm not aware of any conversation with the mayor's office in Rhoda regarding that.
But the building is still PSS, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I open the floor to the members. Recognize Rep. Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies for my tardiness. I just have a quick question. This is kind of off topic from the 2020 fiscal year 2023 budget, but what is the status of the Hopwood campus or all the damages in regards to the FEMA projects?
Sorry, let me just pull up my notes real quick. Okay, so for the FEMA projects, the FEMA projects are separated into several categories. We have the 428 projects, which are more the bigger projects such as Hopwood, FMS Building C, WSR Auditorium. I don't know if you guys remember that cafeteria before, CK. That auditorium, as well as Building C and the Dauk campus. So these are 428 projects, which means we have the flexibility to use the funds to for how we want the buildings to be used. So with the regular I believe it's 406, we have to replace the pre-existing condition. But with 428 funds, we can pretty much design and build whatever we want as long as it's within budget. So with the 428 projects, WSR, the auditorium over there, we are at the pre-final design stage. We have been working with our A&E firm. We have submitted the pre-final design to FEMA. And so we're waiting for comments. And hopefully when we get that back, if there are any comments or mitigation factors that we need to put in place, we will put it in place and then shoot it back. And if we get the green light, then we'll move forward and bid out the project. Building C for WSR, we are pending official task orders from the Public Assistance Office. Cagman Elementary School, so there is an A&E firm that was assigned to this, and we are currently working with the A&E firm to develop the scope of work. Daok Academy, it's past the conceptual stage for design. We are hoping that the task orders will be approved soon for the A&E firm to continue with a full design. Marianas High School Building T, this is the plan for this. This is the old vocational building in Marianas High School. So the plan for this is to build a career technical education facility. And with this, we have several funding sources involved in this project. We have EDA funds, as well as CDBGDR matching funds, and also FEMA. And so we have submitted the demolition plans for this building. It's on the pre-final demolition stage. According to the GAR, we met him this morning, and FEMA just gave the approval. And so we're waiting for the official word from FEMA to go ahead and proceed with the demolition of that building T. And the conceptual design is already in the works. So we're hoping as soon as demolition is completed and we get the task orders assigned to the A&E firm, we can continue moving forward with the full design for this CTE building. Congressman, I have maybe like 60 more projects. You want me to go through everyone?
No, thank you for the good broad
then-
generalizations. Okay, but I just want to know whether it's in the works, and I'm happy to hear that it is. Mr. Chairman, if I may continue. Also, have you guys ever set aside funds for does PSS have any CIP funds available for like new infrastructures for schools? Like, for example, GTC Elementary School, I noticed that they don't have a staging area. That's something that I've been talking to the school about. I'm not sure if they brought it to your attention, but and also recently we funded GTC through our SNILE funds, which was appropriated to our precinct money, which to build a children's playground. It's in the amount of 50,000. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, Mr. Commissioner, but that's I think that I believe that's with finance right now, and the expenditure authorities with you in collaboration with the school principal. So maybe something you can look at. But yeah, going back, do you guys have any funds set aside for certain projects like that?
So with the, sorry, Commissioner. So with the local funds that we receive, we do try our best to set aside funds for really deferred maintenance and not for new infrastructure, because just the amount that we're getting is just not enough to build tackle those kinds of projects, especially now with construction costing anywhere from $250 to $350 per square foot for any new construction. To build one classroom now can cost upwards of $400,000. So it's really not within our budget to have that kind of fund set aside for new construction. However, I am aware of the requests for 2 new classrooms at GTC, as well as a parking lot and the playground and the staging. And we're hopeful that in the future we can receive the funds to proceed with these projects, just because their population keeps growing for some reason at GTC.
Let me ask maybe just a follow-up question. Mr. Commissioner, if you can work with the Department of Finance and GTC, we already, that Saipan local law has already been signed, I believe a few weeks back. It's amounting to 50,000. That was designated for the GTC. So that's covered at 50,000 from our SNIL for the construction of a school playground. So the funds should be available. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rep Camacho. I recognize Rep Selena Vivalta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome PSS and your team. My first question is, how many personnel does PSS currently have, both certified and non-certified?
Okay, thank you. In response to that, under the local appropriation. We currently, at the moment, have a total of 908 FTEs. And then under the federal, I believe it's 224 as of our last count.
And how many vacancies are currently on the
Okay, at the
books?
moment, we have 53 total vacancies.
53?
53.
Are they certified positions? Are they?
Oh, under the vacancies, right now, we have a total of 27 certified vacancies and 26 non-certified.
According to the governor's submission, there are 972 positions for PSS, and that is with the current fiscal year and the proposed as well. Is that correct?
Uh, Yes, that is correct. So that would be the total of 908 plus the 103 FTEs.
New FTEs
Correct.
that you were asking for,
Correct.
but that's in your current budget.
The current budget act actually only has 960 FTEs based on the last budget act that was approved.
We have here showing 972, so we'll try and reconcile that later.
Okay.
So going into FY23, do you plan to fill any of these 53?
As always, the Human Resources Office continues to recruit on a daily basis to replace all of these vacant positions that are vacated throughout the school year. So as they become vacant, we publish them and we hope to fill them with applicants, interested applicants.
So these positions, the 53 that you currently have vacant, have they been advertised? Are there any personnel documents en route or to fill these vacancies?
The answer is yes.
How many of these?
Of those, we have current existing that are currently routing of contracts. So the recruitment's really ongoing. So on a daily basis, to replace those, we have about 2 to 3 contracts that are routing for approval to replace those positions. Off the top of my head, this week, I don't have that exact amount that we routed this week, but I can
Okay.
get that information to you.
So there's currently 2 to 3 en route for approval and until it becomes final. I'm just curious because out of the 53 vacancies, you're also asking for an additional 103. I mean, if you can't fill the 53 now, do you expect to fill the 103?
We are always hopeful and look forward to fill those positions within our school district. So our goal is to make sure we fill those positions if granted, if those FTEs were granted, and if supported by the funding.
And these are primarily funded through the local appropriations, what we're here for today, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. For now, I will yield.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so I'm trying to wrap my head around the need for the additional 103 FTEs, even after Mr. Thornburg had mentioned that, these funds are only here for another 4 years. What will happen after that fiscal cliff? How would we be able to sustain those additional FTEs? Are these FTEs in addition to what the current FTEs that we've had pre-pandemic even? This is an additional 4 million that we don't know if the near future will be able to sustain this growth.
if I may. So currently with the 25 million, right, that is not sufficient enough to accommodate the 103, but hopeful after the 4 years, if granted those FTEs, that the general funds appropriation would be much higher. And we are hopeful for that during that time, when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Recognize Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome again, PSS team. Just a clarifying question. So for the additional FTEs of 103, you mentioned that 51 are certified for certified positions. Are these like critical and essential positions that you are requesting for?
Currently, at the moment, the most critical, which is based on our initiative, is to move forward with at least a 26 CCLA chess instructors to accommodate our K through 12 grade levels in providing Chamorro and Carolinian content throughout the schools.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I was curious, should these additional FTE requests, should we not be able to fund these FTEs, what impact would it have on your program?
The impact really will be the kind of instruction that will be provided to our children. With many students, the population or the teacher-student ratio will be way high. It will also impact the ongoing implementation of the immersion program, which is for everyone to know, that's starting from kindergarten. Our kids are taking either Chamorro or Carolinian at our various schools with 80-20%, 80 full Chamorro or Carolinian and 20 to address the English language arts piece. So I'm thinking really it's about our children that will be impacted on instruction, how they will be getting the teaching and learning opportunity with a lot of students by one teacher or few teachers. The other piece is of course, the immersion, the continuity of how we will be able to sustain the immersion program. So definitely we're already thinking how this would look like if not funded, and what will be our other option and strategies that we might have to put in place and not, have our kids suffer by not giving them the instructor. The best option is really to provide the teacher, to have those FTEs that were mentioned so that we can ensure the quality of instruction that will take place. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Just going back to the teacher-student ratio, what would you say, what is the current ratio right now?
So across all our schools from elementary, middle school, and high school, we have a total of 45 teachers that are teaching either Carolinian or Chamorro. The ratio that we are seeing right now is still very high, with about roughly 150 to 1, and that's why the instruction is, I hate to say it, but jeopardized in a sense, with maybe 2 days of instruction, 3 days of instruction. And, what we want to do is make sure it's done every day because of the rotation of trying to stretch our teachers to teach all the content area. I mean, all the grade levels, especially at the elementary, the middle school, and the high school. We also have been providing access for online. So we do have online Chamorro and Carolinian. So these are the ones that we are able to help, but for the elementary, that's really a struggle. And if I may just also inject that one of the major challenges we have is the recruitment as well. But I think what we are doing now is by word of mouth, going around and say, there are options where we could have our teachers from our community or our people from the community who could come in and facilitate learning with the support of maybe a master teacher. So, yeah, a lot going on right now as we're thinking how that would look like. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Um, so the 46 million that you are requesting for personnel includes it's going to cover the existing 908 FTEs, correct? And then the additional 103 would cost an additional 4 million. Okay. Um, Next question is, how much is PSS currently spending on external consulting contracts, if any? And what are these services for? And can these services be supported with internal capacity to save money?
Um, there's a few on top of my head, but it might not be the full consulting contract. We do have our, just on this administration, we have financial consultant, media consultant, and on the school side, we do have a few under contract which provides professional services. That's too many.
Can you
Yeah.
just give us examples of some of the professional services that they are
Like
providing?
team, maybe you can talk about our professional services. Yeah, title one.
It's really about getting our staff certified. So yes, we do have some consultants. We have a new student information system, and there are consultants that come in for a brief period of time to do training, and then they depart. And hopefully they've imparted everything that our folks need to do the student information system. But it's not really all that much for consultants. We've developed a lot of local capacity, and so when we do bring consultants in, it's for short term, again, to build in that local capacity. So it's not nearly as much as it was, say, 20 years ago. Thank you.
Just to clarify on that question, this is not something that can be done through internal capacity? Sorry, can you use your mic, sir? I can't. Can you use your mic, sir?
In developing a student longitudinal data system, you really need to bring experts in to train the staff. That is happening right now. And within another month or two, they will be totally trained. They'll be training people at the school level. And because the student data comes from each individual school and Head Start center, so it's good data because it tells us across time just how successful our students are. And lastly, we want to bring NMC into it too. So we have a system that goes from preschool all the way through college.
Mr. Chairman, if our senior director would like to speak, would that be okay?
Yes.
Go ahead, our senior director, Dr. Liwai.
Thank you, Commissioner, and good afternoon to all of you. So in addition to what our director of FPO is stating is that we need these consultants or contracts in order for us to fully for our teachers, our record custodians, our school administrators to fully understand the new platform that we are going to be using for the student information system. And this cannot be done just by my office being trained and then we retrain. So there is that is embedded in the contract for them to be a consultant, and at the same time trainers for the entire PSS teachers and staff. The state longitudinal data system is also another platform that needs to be set up, and from there we need to train our teachers, school administrators, and staff on how to use those programs. So that's the reason why consultants and trainers have to be embedded in the contract, and all those are actually in our mostly in the federal funding side. So it's approved by the USDOE, and we're carrying over the programs, making sure that it happens and it gets um, it gets built in the PSS. Thank you.
If I may, Chairman, just to recap, the consultants that we have, we got financial consultant, media consultant, student information. That's the student information system. Title I teachers. Those are also our external consultants providing technical assistance to the school students. And the last one is the financial system of Tyler Munis.
You hired your own consultant for the Munis system?
No, well, we are using Tyler Munis for, yes, we are. We did, yeah.
Thank you. Vice Chair, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. What would you say your actual, how much did you spend in FY 2021 on consulting fees?
Oh, gosh. How much do you?
I do not have the exact number right now, so we will need to get back to you on the exact amount.
Okay, can you do that along with the FY, how much you're spending in FY 2022?
Yes.
Thank you. Next question is, given that ARPA and other federal programs are currently funding many of the positions, what will happen when the funding sunsets? What's your contingency plan?
So, if we are very cognizant of we call it the financial cliff. When ARPA funds are do go, and that is in 2 years now. And would have some technical assistance through Provident Evident, which is a school-based consultant that works with school districts across the nation on helping and planning as we head towards the cliff. So they have come and we worked on a schematic on all the programs and services that we have and looking at the data on which programs are effective and which programs are not being effective. So it's a team effort where we all gather and look at what is the cost of those ineffective programs and services. That is we are preparing ourselves and mentally, psychologically too as well. We are informing everyone because we have been down that road before that in an event that ARPA funds leave in 2 years and revenue does not, everyone prepare ourselves because there will be some adjustments that need to be made. I have it's a how do I say this? It's all across. Everyone is aware and everyone is being forewarned even beginning last year that yes, ARPA funds is here. Yes, we will spend it. And yes, we will provide all the services that we can. But please to make sure that our student achievement improves and Whichever program is effective and efficient will remain, and the ones that are not over. So that's it.
Thank you for that. Another question is, what is PSS currently doing to support inclusion and diversity among students and staff?
Our mental health program, we have a SAMHSA grant that is um, been awarded for the next 5 years. It was a 1.2 million each year, and so that addresses our mental health. And in that Aligi, it's the Aligi and the TASA grant. Aligi is health awareness. Oh gosh, TASA is trauma. Anyway, so those two grants are in our yard now, and we are implementing it. This year is actually training year. Next year is implementation year. And yes, the social emotional piece is being addressed all across the all diverse groups as well.
Thank you. That's really great to hear that you have something in place to take care of our kids and then teachers too, right? Because we're all going through some really challenging times right now. So that's great to hear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. One more. Educational technology has been highly useful in light of the challenges presented by the pandemic. What is PSS doing to continue to leverage technology to support teaching and learning?
Yes. So on the onset of this pandemic, we switched to remote learning. We made sure that every student has a one-to-one laptop. Then the next piece was the MiFis, making sure that every household has internet connectivity. Now, we all know that laptops don't last forever, and its lifespan is 2 to 3 years. So we're also being cognizant of that. And right now that we have ARPA funds, we there are plans of um, procuring more, so that in an event, we know that these laptops in a weekly, monthly basis, they do breaks or become non-functional. We have to replace them. It is considered loan to the student until they graduate. When they graduate, then they get to keep the laptop and the MiFi. So that is how we're doing it with technology. Along with teaching online, we are now meeting our learners. These are the Xenials that they are electronic technologically prone. Don't get me wrong, the worksheets and the pencils and papers still work, but our learners are on that side of the fence. So we are making our adjustments by teaching, by doing a lot of training for our teachers. Currently, in fact, yesterday and today, we began the program of doing more teaching online training for our teachers. And currently, I proud to say there's a number 700 plus teachers are being taking advantage of this training through the platform of the BBU Blackboard. So thank you.
Excellent news. Thank you for sharing that with us. And one last question, Chair, if I may. Can you talk about programs that are currently federally funded that do not draw from the local funds, and what percent of the indirect cost comes from these grant-funded programs? And is PSS keeping any of those indirect costs, or are they going elsewhere? Thank you.
I like to say the indirect cost is mine, but it's not. Everyone knows about the indirect costs pot. So, Mr. Thornburg.
Okay, we have a number of programs that are not locally funded, and they do generate, for example, indirect cost. But most of these programs, for example, we recently bought 5,000 laptops. Well, when we get a 4.8% indirect cost rate, you think, wow, that's really big money, except the rule on contracts is you can only draw indirect costs on the first 25,000. So it's about $1,600 instead of 320,000. So there's a magnitude of difference. We anticipate this year that will generate about $1.3 million in indirect costs. Half of that money goes simply for staff in my office and related offices, staff that work on multiple grants and are not easily expensed against any one grant. And then the balance is basically for the costs of some of our consultants and the cost of audits, the costs of various programs that need a little bit more money. And that's how we use our indirect costs. So we use it actually rather similar to direct costs, the exception being it's primarily for people that are working on multiple grants or are working on audits, etc.
Thank you for that explanation.
You're
I yield
welcome.
for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Going back to consultants, so I'm trying to wrap my head around PSS being an educational institution, and constantly we see professionals from PSS going off, getting trained. How can we not use that services as opposed to hiring these contracts and trying to minimize the need and costs and in going outside what the professionals that you already have? I mean, I know one thing that I know I've experienced when I was a teacher is that when we go off island and we come back, we share what we learn and we train our peers. So how can that same concept be applied towards your professional staff and having to, spend these monies elsewhere when you have your qualified staff on board?
If I may, Chair. So, especially this year, we've a lot of the conferences and the programs, school programs, are being open with the lifting of the mask and the 3Ws in some states. And a lot of the trainings that they do and they plan it systematically in different regions. And sometimes, and I hear what you're saying because I too myself see that I see that a lot of travel. So it's the concept now is to bring a group of trainers to go over there so they can come back, train the trainers, and then come back. Especially this year, they're under the SAMHSA grant for mental health. For example, there are three major trainings that need to be in place before we implement it to our students, to our clients. So the first one is prepare training, the other one is grief recovery, and the last one is nonviolent crisis. So the trainers are not able to come to the islands, but they offer us that if we do go to them, we get that number of hours of training. We come back and they become certified. They're able to train. There is plans of the statewide PD in August, which is scheduled for that all travels that are taking place, all personnel that went on travel will come back, and we will have plenary sessions for the entire um, over 1,000 staff. So that is the statewide plan that we have in August. If I may, Chairman, I did bring two of our part of our key management, and they are the ones that really also educate us and work with us, and we help together, we plan. And so, if I may, I like to call on our Instructional Technology Distance Education Director, Dr. Bobby Cruz, to join us on this conversation. Is that possible? So, Dr.
Please.
Cruz, can you please come up? So, Dr. Cruz is also the director of ISTD, Instructional Technology Distance Education. And if you have any questions regarding technology, he has more information or more background information if you need, if should there be any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Well, my question was more on consultants.
Oh,
Yeah, I just wanted to register this because, Ms. Kitagwa mentioned this, immersion program, and that's something I 100% fully support. But if we're utilizing resources to hire outside contracts as opposed to training your current staff in sharing these educational tools to the teachers, I mean, we can divert these resources to ensure that this immersion program is something that's fully supported. Again, you're asking for 103 additional FTEs, and time and time again, I've said this in whether it's the education committee or even last fiscal year. As much as we want additional staff to come on board, I also want to see our teachers back to pre-pandemic levels where they're getting, these salary adjustments that were implemented was long awaited for. I was fortunate enough to be in that group that where the salary increases was implemented across the board. From my understanding, that was taken or these cuts were they haven't been reverted back to pre-pandemic levels, and here we are trying to continue to find FTEs that in the future after 4 years or when this funding runs out, we may be faced to put teachers on reduced hours again. And so we're trying to prepare for that time and we want to hear from PSS, how is PSS preparing for when that time comes. But we're seeing here additional FTEs, 100 new FTEs, but we haven't taken care of the teachers that have been with PSS. So help us understand that process. I mean, as you've mentioned, the fiscal cliff is coming. How do we prepare for that? But also, how do we prepare our current loyal teachers and staff that have been with this system, but have yet to see, them being appreciated through these salaries that they've worked hard for in the past. And so I'm hearing that there's so many plans that I'm happy to hear about, but there are also issues that we want to address before we ask for additional funds to support these other services.
so the pre-pandemic salary schedule for everyone in PSS, including the teachers, was a budget that was not sustainable because at that time, when it was being implemented, our revenues was not making it. So they had to adjust the budget, and we went from 32 to 25 million. Like overnight, it seems like. So I had to make a hard decision to make a cross the board for everyone to make that salary adjustment. Yes, it hurt, but the money was not coming in, and I had to make that decision for everyone. We had to live within our dime and our nickel at that time. And then, so that was the recession, and then the pandemic came, and it kind of pushed us further to the negative. However, ARPA funds came, or ESF 1, Educational Stabilization 1, first came, and then ESF2 came, and then ARPA came. What we did was we did our best to restore back those payless paydays. We paid everybody back, and then in due time we lifted. At that time, we put a stop on all certification increase. So every teacher that worked for 2 years, they get their 5 or 10% increase according to the salary schedule. So we went back to our salary schedule, and we continued giving the teachers their well-deserved after putting in their 2 years, every 2 years. So ARPA came. Now we have this funds, and the way we wanted to do it, we did not want to go back to the what happened on the pre-COVID time. So what we and the board decided was to give everyone across the board a 10% retention. It's a retention incentive fund. So if a teacher was making 50,000 that year in the last 2 or 3 years, and even up to now, they get 10% of that as their retention incentive. And that's how we are rewarding them as much as possible. Retention incentive, and also what that two-step increase every 2 years when they stay on board. So that's how we were trying to restore back. But to go back to the pre-salary, the pre-COVID salary, we have to guarantee a 42 million every year. And we're all trying to anticipate how are we going to sustain 42 million when ARPA fund leaves. If I may, personally, I really do not want to give the teachers an increase in their salary now and then 2 years later to take it back from them or make that adjustment. Where I'm satisfied with giving them the 10,000, the 10% retention incentive right now, because it's a one-time deal. It's no commitment down after the ARPA funds leaves. I'm not sure if that is the best approach, but I really wish that we do not go back to the way when I had to make that decision in the past, because I too suffered. We all suffered, and I don't want to do that again. So I'm not sure, and I know your question is regarding teacher salary and giving it back to them. We are taking care of them, and as much as possible, giving them what they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anna. And I get that. But you're putting yourself in that same situation if we were to approve this 103
Okay.
additional FTEs. Even if we don't provide this increase to the teachers and we take on 103 additional employees, the 900 some will be affected by that one decision of adding that 103 FTEs. And so as much as I see the need for these positions, teachers have been doing more than one shift. And so they deserve this, to be recognized for that. From my understanding, Hopwood is still in double sessions. How can we address, this double session issue? Have there been any discussion in how these double sessions will be resolved? I know you've already identified Hopwood, the current location being the location for where this, you're keeping the location, but how are you addressing the double sessions? So, yeah, let my discussion segue into that question. How is PSS addressing the double session?
Um, please forgive me for saying, but we just got out of graduation and closing of the school activity, and then right now we'll be meeting with the principals on the 17th of this month. But before that, I will be meeting with the middle school principals to discuss exactly that. How are we going to alleviate hubwood population? You're right. It's not fair that Tanapag Middle School students get a full day schedule while Hubwood gets half day or 4 hours a day. And I hear it from the parents as well. What I'm not sure. We have to look at the data or how they progressed last year. How Hubwood did it was it's face to face on in the morning, and then they go asynchronous in the afternoon. They go virtual, and that's how it's been in the last 2 years. I wish I can answer. I wish I have a better answer, but it's the best that we could do at that time. At this time, it hit us even more when we had to implement the 6 feet distancing, and that even helped. Really, it was hard because Hubbard was only getting like 2 or 3 days, 2 times a week, face to face, in person. Now we're trying to get them to go 5 times a week. I'm sorry, in person. So um, I can get back to you on the future plans for Hubbard.
Thank you, Commissioner. Recognize Rep. Babalta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious, how much does PSS receive in did PSS receive for ESF 1? And ESF 2 and ARPA?
ESF one, we had 23.1 million.
Okay.
ESF two, 61 million, and then ARPA, 160 million.
Was there any other federal funding due to the
Yes,
pandemic that PSS received aside from these 3?
Mhm.
Which one?
we have the Consolidated Grant money.
And which federal agency
That's not what.
gave that?
We also had
How much was that?
I'm sorry, for the Consolidated Grant money. It varies. So I'm going to yield to Mr. Tim Thornburg because Malumi private schools too. We
Okay.
Consolidated Grant.
Okay.
So
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Tim.
Mr. Thornburg.
Okay, yeah, Commissioner's right. We got 21 million ESF one. We used that primarily to bring our teachers back after they were furloughed. Then we got ESF two money, and again, we used that primarily for the salaries of our teachers, the backfill in the local budget, 32 million each year. And then the ARPA money, and the ARPA money is good for this year plus 2 more years. So we've got a total of 4 years worth of ARPA money. The 2 other grants that we got as a result of, I guess you would say, typhoons and pandemics, there was Project Restart, which was money to help repair classrooms, buy additional buses. That was 9.25 million. And that's, I think we've got maybe 100,000 left out of that. And then there was Project Serve, and it was the first grant we got right after That would have been Super Typhoon Yutu, and that was like $1.2 million. But it was really helpful. It helped us with utilities. It helped us with the bus overtime and the bus because we were running buses. So many schools were on double
Yes.
session. We were running buses from dawn to dusk. It paid for substitute teachers and just for a small group of kind of critically needed expenses that we didn't have any local money to cover. So that's kind of the five big grants that we got as a result of either typhoons or the virus.
Thank you. I didn't catch the name of the last one, the one you said that helped with the 1.2. What was that one called?
That
Project
was Project Serve.
SERV.
SERV, yes.
Okay. And how much of that 1.2 is left over, or if any?
Zero.
Zero. Okay. And aside from that, what other grants, regular grants, does PSS receive?
Okay, well, we've got our food service grant, which provides school breakfast and lunch to all of our public schools, most of our private schools, our daycare centers. That's an annual formula grant. We have, as a commissioner mentioned, the Consolidated Education Grant.
How much do you get in the food service
It's about 19 million.
per year?
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
And then the Consolidated Grant, which is just under 18 million right now, and that's important. 6.5 million of that is allocated directly to our public schools to pay for supplemental learning materials, whatever teachers and students need. And then a big piece has been invested in, believe it or not, technology, in the iPads, in the connectivity, which is the MiFis. We're spending about $5 million a year on that. And again, the laptops we buy are very good laptops. They have a 2-year guarantee, but after 2 years, and student use, they tend to fail, and so we buy them on a continuous basis, figuring on replacing about 5,000 a year.
Okay, any further grants? Those are the regular grants, aside from the
Well,
special
okay.
ones.
Okay, there's also Head Start, and Early Head Start, which are preschool services.
And how much is that?
It's about just slightly under 3 million.
Anything else?
There's, as the commissioner mentioned, the mental health grants. There's the state longitudinal district grant. And then we have a number of small little grants, like the Swim for Life grant, where we have teachers teaching students who do not know how to swim and teaching them in the ocean, and they learn.
If I may.
Sure.
So let me just give you a rundown real quick on the
Please,
other.
or if you have a list.
We do it on page 157 of our report, but here, special ed, 5.3.
It's there.
Um,
Okay. And the amounts are listed there, is that correct?
yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll take a look at it later on. The 10% retention incentive, is that only for teachers?
It's for everybody.
Everybody.
It's for everybody at PSS?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to the information technology distance program, and I know Dr. Bobby Cruz is the director, right? Okay, can you tell us a little bit about that program? Is it new? What do you hope to accomplish with that program?
Sure. Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, members of this committee. And so the Instructional Technology and Distance Education Department is one of the newest departments of of the public school system, we have actually, it's not necessarily new. It began as a program in 2010. It was a program under the Office of Student and Support Services, but in light of the growing need for the integration of more instructional technology, it then moved into a department. And so I'll kind of give you a brief history. In 2010, we saw that there was a significant teacher shortage on the islands of Tinian and Rota, and we still had students that needed these required courses in order to graduate. So no teachers, to teach those required courses. Those students weren't able to meet those graduation requirements, and so we leveraged the power of technology to provide online courses, and so that's how distance education was first born. And then we had many teachers that were struggling to get their certification and licensure, which moves them up to the next professional rung, which has some financial incentives for moving up in their tiers of certification. And so we felt that to better support the retention of our educational professionals, we then would again leverage the power of technology to be able to provide these courses at no cost to our teachers. NMC is great, but there are some courses that the teachers need that they aren't able to provide as of now, and so we then use that to solve that particular issue. And then when COVID-19 hit, we needed to go full remote learning, and so that's when the commissioner said that it's apparent that educational technology is a major focal point. And so what then was decided is that it was moved into an official department. Currently, where we offer a range of different programs, we have our student portal program, which offers free secondary courses to both private and public institutions throughout the CNMI. Our current enrollment is about 1,700. So while MHS has the highest enrollment of any brick and mortar school, we technically have the highest enrollment of the online program, which we're really, really, really proud about. And so that, again, that particular program allows many students to avail of a variety of different advanced placement courses, CTE courses. And again, it's also offered to both public and private school students. And then our professional portal program, we have now expanded those services to not only support PSS personnel, but we've also made those certification courses available to our private school professionals. And so we run the program twice a year. All of the Board of Education certification and licensure programs are offered through our professional portal program. We have our educational technology training program, which again seeks to bridge the gap between which focuses on helping teachers integrate online educational technology in the classroom. And so we again offer that to both our public school and also our private school educators. Our Aspiring Leaders program supports the professional growth and development of aspiring instructional leaders. And then most recently, we've started to pilot to expand those online opportunities into the middle school and also elementary level. And I just as a shameless plug here, we also just finished as of 2 p.m. this afternoon, the first ever EdTech virtual conference in the Marianas. So we're very proud of our program.
Congratulations. I'm excited for that program. That's all I have. I will yield.
Thank you. I believe Representative Tina Saban's up.
Yes, thank you, Vice, and welcome, Commissioner, and your team. Thank you for your presence here today. I have several questions. So my first has to do with the issue of FTEs and salaries. So I'm trying to understand. I've heard a lot of numbers being thrown out here about current FTEs and vacant FTEs and locally funded versus federally funded. And I guess I'm just wondering, how many new hires have you picked up with PSS since the pandemic?
All right. So basically, since that pandemic started, so 2020 up until now, uh, replacing all of our to replace those vacancies. So, as I mentioned in one of the previous meetings, we have on average a year 30 teachers that leave. We conduct a survey every year in February, and we collect those surveys so it can help us plan with recruitment. So, on average, we recruit throughout the year within 2020 and 20 about 80 per year in all positions. As far as teaching position goes, our high peak of recruitment is right now. So on average, 30 towards the end of the school year in preparation for the new school year. So about 80 in a year, we recruit, replace if there's an FTE that needs to be filled.
Okay, and could you just clarify for me then the FTEs that you get in the Budget Act? Does that include also your federally funded FTEs? No.
In the budget act, it's only the local FTE.
Okay. And so even if you must have FTEs or personnel that are partially federally funded, partially locally funded. Are those partially funded FTEs included in the numbers that you give to the legislature for your
Yes.
budget? Okay, thank you. And for the past few years, I've heard in this chamber that PSS was contracting an independent professional firm to do a study of your compensation schedule. Was that study ever completed, and what was the result of that?
All right, a little bit of history in response to that. So back in 2012, that's when the initial stage started out for a compensation study to be conducted. Unfortunately, at that time, it wasn't successful, so they created what's called the Budget Review Committee in PSS, which ended up establishing the adopted compensation plan back in 2017. Between 2019, after the budget shortfall, we were directed to go ahead and put out a study, compensation plan study, and analysis to review again from the external part to review our compensation and see if they can recommend what's most appropriate compensation within our jurisdiction, within the allocated budget, both local and federal, so that we are able to have it stabilized and move forward. We've done several announcements, and we actually closed, I believe this was the fourth or fifth RFP announcement that we had closed last about 2 weeks ago. And I am about to review the submission, and hopefully we have something in the future that will be able to a vendor or an external consultant to review it and make recommendations. So that's our latest update as of today.
I see. Thank you for that update. Can I ask why is this the fourth time that PSS is trying to do this? Like why couldn't we do it before?
So we've advertised it out. It's on our website. It's a matter of, I think we received prospective interest, but as far as when the submission deadline comes, they don't submit.
So you just never had a proposal submitted?
Yes, like
before?
at least more than one or two proposal.
Okay. Well, hopefully this time around, fourth time is a charm.
I hope
right?
so. Thank you.
So you're still operating then on the salary schedule that was adopted by the Budget Review Committee, the adjusted salary schedule that
The
was
reduction
adopted.
in 2019,
Right.
yes.
And then was the chairman correct when he said it was his understanding, it was also our understanding that for the staff that saw their salaries reduced, those reductions haven't actually been restored. You've opted instead to give the retention incentive.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. My next question has to do with the money for textbooks. So PSS is exempt from the OPA 1%. We've been talking a lot about that fee this whole week and last week. But for PSS's case, that 1% should be going to textbooks. And then on top of that, in this current year Budget Act, you received $378,000, a little over that, for a total of what should have been over $628,000 for textbooks. What did PSS do with that money?
So for the instructional materials, we get all the physical copies for our students. And just to give a little background also, the 1% that we are receiving is actually probably going to purchase only one grade level.
So that's
For
about
physical.
$250,000?
Yes,
For one
because
grade
now
level.
we are getting physical and digital. When a new adoption comes through, which we did last year for math, for K to 5, that amount went up to 1.4 million. It's really very small,
Mhm.
but with what we are getting from that 1%.
I see. Okay. And are you tracking, have you been tracking over the years the use of the OPA 1% for
Yes,
textbooks? And so it's consistently every year not enough to meet the need.
yes,
Okay.
not enough. If I may just go back, in the 2016-17, we got that supplemental for instructional materials.
Mhm.
When we got that amount, which was about 9 million or so, that amount was able to purchase English language arts from grades 9 to 12, math for grades 9 to 12, entirely K to 12 science, entirely social studies K to 12. That's what got us to get our materials back then.
Mhm.
And we're coming to that timeline also where these materials are now becoming obsolete
Okay.
because of the pandemic. So
So are the funds for instructional materials then supplemented from other sources within PSS's budget? Yes. Okay.
yes.
Thank you. And then my next line of questioning has to do with Hopwood and the other pending FEMA projects. And so first of all, do you anticipate, Commissioner, that double sessions will continue for Hopwood in the next year?
I think the safest answer to say for now is yes, but it's subject to change in the next 2 months. Like I said, I've yet to meet with the middle school principals to look at the middle school campus and see how much space they have
Mm-hmm.
and how much they can accommodate.
I see. Okay.
Some,
Is Hopwood the only school that is doing double sessions still?
yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, so we should be expecting an update on that sometime before the school year starts then.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I actually asked the principal of Hobwood to do a survey with their parents and their teachers
Mm-hmm.
on a survey on the halftime. So, for 3 hours in person, and then the other 3 hours they go online in synchronous. That's their daily schedule.
Okay.
Versus another middle schooler will have a full day in person session. So
Right.
we're kind of like piloting it to see if there is any growth in reading and math, or we're trying to compare to see. But for the most part, we all know that in person is always best.
Mm-hmm.
For our middle schoolers, especially,
Yeah.
their
We gotta get them back in school.
turmoil time
Mm-hmm.
when they're growing and they're changing, they
Yeah.
need a lot of social emotional learning.
Mm-hmm.
And to be on campus is where it's at. We have the resources for them for that.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, thank you for that update. And then going back to the 50,000 that we appropriated for that feasibility study, I understand that it wasn't used for that, but has it been used for something else?
not that I know of, no.
Okay.
But can we use it for
Textbooks, maybe.
for something else, like the walkway or car riders section for Hopwood? Because now they're asking for that too. So
Yeah. Well, I guess I would wonder if that would fall within
feasibility study.
the reprogramming authority of the existing reprogramming authority you would have.
Okay.
Maybe that would be something to look into. And could I ask also then, so who awarded the contract for the relocation study that Helios conducted?
Public Assistance Office.
Okay, and what was the
Yeah.
source of that funding?
I think they used their I'm not sure if they use their ARPA funding. ARPA funds, do they use their ARPA funds? We're not sure what funding they use.
Mhm.
All we know is that they covered it.
Okay, but you were involved, like you were consulted, right?
Yes,
In the
yes.
course of that study? Okay. And this is, I was surprised to hear that there were 3 locations that were reviewed.
Yes.
Where is the Esgono site that came out
Okay,
number 1?
so it's across. Okay, so you know Guangdong Hardware,
Mhm.
and then the church, right? So if you do a 4-way,
Mm-hmm.
it's on that corner across the Beneventi.
I see.
It's in
Okay.
like grassland.
And that's public land?
Yes, it is, and
Hmm.
I believe it's a proposed homestead. I think,
Okay.
which wow, it'd be really fitting if we have a middle school there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Interesting. But ultimately, the board decided to keep Hopwood at the current location in Chalampiao, which is
Yes.
fine. I mean, I'm glad that there is finally a decision,
Exactly.
and that now we can move forward with
Yes.
Hopwood. But I am concerned that so many of the projects that were mentioned, including Hopwood, sound still like they are in the very early stages, pre-final, conceptual. And we're going on 4 years since Super Typhoon U2. And, I'm glad that the PA office finally did this relocation study, but why did it take 4 years to do that? And why did it take 4 years for the board to finally make a decision?
Okay, 2 questions. The first one was, how did we discover the third location for Hopwood? Or
No, I would like to understand. I'm concerned that it has taken this
Oh,
long
yeah.
just to get to just conceptual, just pre-final, just finally after 4 years to do a relocation study, right? And like, why?
Yes.
Why?
I'm
That's
gonna
what I
yield
want to
to Mr.
understand.
Magufnia. Mr. Magufnia, go ahead.
Good afternoon again. So the reason or the question why only now is, or so with Typhoon U2, the way the funding is set up is that the federal government will take care of 90% of the cost and the local government would have to come up with the 10%. So in order for us to move forward with any projects, we would have to identify the 10% requirement. And this is right after Typhoon U2, and then right after Typhoon U2, that major disaster, we kind of hit the economy wasn't doing too great, so we couldn't come up with the 10%, which PSS total project is in the neighborhood of about $60 million. So 10% of that would be $6 million.
Mhm.
And so in 2018, we didn't have the funds. 2019, we as well, and 2020. It wasn't until 2021, with the assistance of the CDBGDR office, that we received the 10%. So the agreement with CDBGDR, FEMA, and PAO is that the CDBGDR will take 10% of the total cost, but split it up in projects. So instead of doing 10% of each project, they would take 4 projects that would equal 10% of the total amount.
Mhm.
So now that, because we finally have that matching requirement, that then allowed us to do the work for FEMA. Because in the past, what we would do is with the funds, local funds that we had, we tried to make the small repairs that we could with our funding. And right now, we have submitted those requests for reimbursements. But the amounts, our budget was never sufficient enough to really tackle any of the big projects.
Wow. Okay.
So just
Yeah.
last year, I believe in February or
Yeah.
March, that we get the confirmation for 10%.
Okay. That's yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I'm not saying that this is all of PSS's fault why it's taken so long. I'm not saying that at all. But it's, just I feel for all of PSS and the students for how long this whole process has taken. And even with CDBGDR, like we've had these conversations in this chamber about the use of those funds to assist PSS with the 10% match. And, here we are 2022, another typhoon season is around the corner, and you just received the money 4 years after the last typhoon. And it just seems like we could do so much more to improve these processes and get this money flowing faster so these projects can be done faster. I also want to ask now about the plan for Dauk Academy, because those are the last group of students still learning intense, right? And do we expect that to continue in the next school year too?
So the Dauk Academy is one of the 428 projects. And hold on, let me just pull that up real quick. Dauk Academy received $1.7 million in 428 funds for us to rebuild that the Dauk Academy building. Originally, Dauk Academy was in the Marinas High School campus. However, the board through the CIP committee approved the new location for Dauk, which will now be at the Coblerville Elementary School site.
This is where Hopwood used to be, right? The Hopwood
Further,
students?
it'll be between Saipan Southern High School and Coblerville Elementary School.
Okay.
So not where the current tents are at.
Oh, for the new facility, that's where
Yes.
it's going to be. Okay.
For the new facility, but so as soon as that project is completed, the Dauk Academy would move into that building. But for now, for the meantime, they will be at their current location.
And these are the same tents that the Hopwood students used before?
Yes.
So we're already coming up on the end of life for those tents, right? I mean, aren't they just anticipated to last not more than 5 years?
That was what we were told.
Yeah. And as I recall, the students and the staff complained about inadequate facilities, dust, dirt, mud, rats. I mean, are these still the same conditions that the Dauk kids are facing?
No, we've done work with the campus. We've hired companies to go in and do the mitigation for the rodents, and also with the flooding, we've addressed, except for when it's major rainy season, but for the most part, we've taken care of the issues that were happening in the beginning. Like even with the air conditioning, we've upgraded some of the air conditioning units, and just a lot of repairs went to those tents.
But still, they're intense.
Still,
right?
they're tents,
And,
yes. And
especially considering the very unique needs and the particular challenges that the Dauk student population faces already just in life, right? I am concerned that continuing to keep them in these tents, and they're the only students learning in tents, is really becoming, or is already, an issue of equity. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if there's another location that would be more appropriate for and conducive to their learning, but I hope that finding an acceptable learning environment for these students will be among your priorities for this upcoming school year. I'd like to ask for that. And then finally, is PSS at risk of losing control over FEMA funds for reconstruction and mitigation?
losing control of FEMA funds?
Yeah, it has come to my attention in just the last few months, and maybe something has changed now that you have a match confirmed for through the CDBG-DR, but that because of how long it's taken for a whole slew of projects to move, that there was this risk that PSS would no longer have management control over these funds.
Okay. So with regards to the FEMA funds, it's our 428 projects. Yes, they are still in the design phases. The only one that's about ready for bidding is the WSR cafeteria, but all our other PW FEMA works are nearing completion. GTC is done. Tanapag Middle School, we're about 90% done with Tanapag Middle School. Cagman Elementary, Chacha is almost 100% complete. Cagman High School is nearing completion. Southern High, all of our other schools are near completion. It's just the big 4 to 8 projects that we are still in the design phases. And so as long as we're able to show FEMA progress according to the FEMA local office and also the public assistance office, when we do request for an extension, which is coming up in October, that extension will more than likely be granted for PSS to continue to push forward with the projects.
Okay. Thank you for that update. I hope so. I hope that is the case. Thank you, and I yield.
Thank you, Rep. Solon. I recognize the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So can we just go back briefly to the vacancies? So currently you have 53 vacant positions, correct?
That is correct.
And of that 53, are there any like entry level positions?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, and as Dr. Etta had mentioned, the school had just closed out, so we have lots of graduates. And it's not coincidental, but lately I've been getting a lot of calls from parents, mostly parents, sharing their frustrations and challenges and concerns about, the newly graduates trying to find jobs, even for entry level. And I was wondering if the PSS currently has a program in where maybe like graduating seniors are provided some kind of a part-time job so that they can gain some kind of experience, so that when they do graduate, that they're not facing these issues of, oh, we can't hire you because you don't have any experience. I know that in some of the schools on the mainland, seniors are required to take up part-time jobs, and normally the school will actually find those jobs for them. A lot of them are also like TAs, right, the teacher's aide, just to give them something to gain experience. And it is actually a requirement for them to graduate and like earn credits and graduate. So I wanted to ask if that was something that PSS already offers or is thinking about offering.
All right. So to respond to that, we currently have what's called the high dosage student peer-to-peer tutor opening, that high school students with a GPA of 3.0 or either have graduated early and are enrolled at a college or university of their choice, they can apply. We have high dosage tutoring as of the moment. We have like 47 openings, and we're in the process of recruiting them for the summer term. We also have right now the mental health summer internship that even the high school students or recent graduates can apply for, which gives them that opportunity to explore and at the same time gain experience as they decide what they're going to do with their future. So it's a really good program that we have right now this summer.
Okay, thank you. That's really great to hear that you have those incentives, because I can understand the frustrations that the parents are having, but more so just on the students, it affects their morale, right? And they just feel like they've applied to 10 different jobs and nobody wants to hire them because they don't have any experience. And their argument to that is like, well, how can we gain experience if you don't give us the opportunity to even take on an entry level position? So I was just curious to see whether or not PSS already has a program in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Before I close out with some of the questions that I have, any other member have any questions? I recognize Rep. Yanktumai.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, PSS. Now, I just want to ask about these entry-level positions. Where can the kids go to apply?
They can visit the Human Resources office here in Capitol Hill, or we also have them, the application is ready available online. If they don't have a car, they can fill it out and then submit it an official email to the PSS Human Resources Office.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all. I yield.
Thank you, Rep. Yanktamai. Just to follow a couple follow-up questions in regards to instructional materials. I believe this question will be for Ms. Kirwa. You mentioned the 9 million. When will that funding, or how long do you have left on these instructional materials in which you've used this funding for? You said it was coming to an end,
Oh,
or something
no.
to that effect.
Thank you. Clarification. The funding is already all used.
Uh-huh.
What is going to end is the adoption period, the timeline, and that's 22-23.
So, what would these textbooks, instructional materials look like for all grade levels moving forward?
Okay. Started writing my notes on that so that I'd be able to cover it as much as I could. So the new instructional materials that we are looking at and all the content, the program specialists have started this process since December of 2021, and it's still ongoing for the reason that stakeholders' engagement in the process, which includes teachers, administrators, parents, and even students, have a voice. What is recommended, highly recommended, as we look at trends, is to ensure that the instructional materials that we are going to be using meets the high quality standards. And those high quality standards include alignment, coherence, rigor, and usability. We added some of our own local criteria, which includes culturally responsive and linguistically responsive to meet the needs of our children, making sure that the materials also would meet diverse needs of students, not only tier 1, but including tier 2, tier 3. And that includes even the population with students with disability, ELL, and struggling learners. The other component that is very strong right now is looking at the use of technology and making sure that these resources also addresses the 21st century learning skills across our entire CNMI. So these materials would need to have those components. And we hope to really conclude on the selection process, hopefully by end of June. It's just taking a little longer because, all our schools would need to individually rate the different programs that have been vetted already, meeting the high quality standards. So what would this look like? Most of it is really answering the also learning environments that our kids have been through during the pandemic, which is the different learning environments that I'm referring to includes virtual, blended or hybrid, and of course, face-to-face. Another element that we had to consider is, the developmentally age-appropriate resources. Not all our kids, especially the little ones, really, after 2 years of, going in and out, right, of virtual or blended, more and more our parents have voiced the concern that, our kids would need to have access to, physical copies as well. So we're looking at the lower elementary, like K to 2, recommended to have both physical and digital. The upper grades will have digital resources, which will give all teachers access as well as our students. So it's quite a change, but at the same time, we're also looking at the trends, what our kids are expected to know and do by the time they graduate from high school. So the use of technology, the use of these digital tools are really essential moving forward. I can honestly say that we are anticipating a good amount of funds that we need to begin thinking once 22-23 ends, because all the materials that we have will expire then.
But we are shifting into the digital materials for the upper grades, and so the cost would not be as great as what it would be now if we had stuck to the hard copy
Yeah.
instructional materials.
Correct. That's what we're hoping, and we're excited about that. And thanks for all the technology, the devices as well, the training that has been supported thoroughly across the district. And now even our lower elementary getting access to these digital supports, as well as those real, the tactile use, and holding a book for at that level is very crucial.
Thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned gaps. I know there's been several learning gaps because of all these different methods in how PSS has had to transition into during this pandemic. Does PSS have any data as to how our students are performing in, let's say, the ASVAB score, or I don't even know if SATs are even considered these days, but SATs or even entrance level examinations for NMC or other colleges that will place students at a higher math or English courses? Do you have any data as to how these past 2 years and the instructions have affected the students? Have we seen an increase or decrease in the success of these students placing at where we hope for them to place at, or passing these tests like the ASVAB or all these other tests? I mean, is that something that PSS have right now?
I will say a few things, and then Commissioner, and then I will yield to Dr. Riza, since she is pretty much the one handling all the assessments. So at the onset of the pandemic, and knowing that there will be funds coming across to CNMI as a result of, the so-called unfinished learning or learning loss, we looked at the data that we currently had under the Renaissance, which is Star Math, Star Reading, which I think you're very familiar with that, right? And what we looked at is what was the trend prior year, pre-pandemic, and during that time, which was 2020, 2021. And yes, it was evident that, we need to look at the gaps. And that was what created the plan to address the learning loss or unfinished learning. That's one of the reasons why we also brought in extended learning opportunities across all our schools, across CNMI, Rhoda, Tinian, and Saipan. And as a result of this extended learning, let me backtrack. The extended learning opportunities include summer learning, which for this year, we're going to start June 27 to July 29, 5 weeks. We also have credit recovery, enrichment programs, including dual enrollment that, our high school kids can access with NMC, NMTI, and even GMTC. So, opportunities have been opened across. And to date, we have 17 plans that have been submitted by our schools on how to address the gaps. So, and high dosage tutor support and peer tutor support was folded into this process, into this opportunity for our kids. So it's very exciting, and I would like to now yield to Dr. Riza to give you some updates on the assessment results.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again. So, for your question regarding ASVAB and entrance exams for NMC, what I understand is that NMC is using the star reading and star math right now to identify the level of the students in terms of their reading proficiency and their math proficiency. So because of the pandemic, they're not able to test the students with their own instrument, but rely on the instruments that we have. And yes, there is an unfinished learning. In fact, when we looked at the longitudinal data for 3 years, it shows that there's an impact on student learning from elementary all the way to high school. So however, because this year we were able to put the students back to most of the time to the face-to-face, despite of the challenges with the pandemic, that we did hybrid, or sometimes we do virtual and sometimes we do face to face. It shows in our longitudinal data that the gap between 2019 to 2020 for students who are not proficient and above in star reading and star math becomes bigger. But comparing it from 2020 to 2021, and then 2021, 2022, it seems like the students are getting back on track. So the gap is getting smaller, and we're really hoping that this gap will get smaller. So I'll give you an example for that. Looking at the students in high school in 11th grade. So in uh, 2019 to 2022, 2019-2020, about 34% of our students are at or above proficiency level in star reading. And now it's in 2021-2022, because of that face-to-face, it went up to 38%. But this still shows that out of 1,000, for example, students, only 38%. The rest, 60 some percent, are still not on a proficient level. Although we see an increase. For this year's alone, in the high school, based on a report in Star Math, in ninth grade, our students who are proficient and above in math is went up from 32% to 38%. In grade 10, 51% to 61%. 11th grade, 52% to 59%. And 12th grade is 59% to 63%. So there is an increase. What we're looking forward is really by 2026, at least 60% of our students should be in a proficient and above in reading and math. And right now, our target is 50%. So it shows that for high school in grades 10, 11, 12, our math is really doing well in meeting that goal compared to the nationwide. Where we do have struggles in middle school and ninth grade, and that's what we're addressing. What we're addressing now for the next school year. And thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, I just have two more, and then we'll end up. We'll close up. The next question that I have is in regards to the campuses, just the revitalization of the campuses. I know one of the member of the committee also brought this up for me to ask, and we wanted to find out what is PSS doing to renovate and provide for an environment that is conducive to learning. I know research shows that just having a nice learning environment can help increase the students' performance. So, and I've seen some of the conditions of these schools. So I just wanted to hear what are some of the steps that PSS is taking to address that.
You want to answer that? Yeah, go ahead. But I was going to say something, but go ahead. Do it.
Sorry. So, with regards to campus um, repairs and deferred maintenance, our we're very fortunate that with the ARPA funds, we do have funds that we can use to address some of the issues with our buildings. So with the ARPA funds, we're able to install new air conditioning units for all our classrooms. We were able to install as well UV lighting, and with ARPA funds, a portion of it went to school operations. So a lot of the schools have used it to do a lot of repairs in their classrooms. For the local side, really our budget for repairs and maintenance is very minimal, and it's really just to address deferred maintenance. Um, yes, also with the ARPA funding, we were able to purchase new furnitures for all our classrooms, and several schools have already received their furnitures, and other schools are still pending shipment. But progress is ongoing for all the classrooms, and we hope that in the future we can continue to do more renovations to every campus based, hopefully when we have the funding for it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, in addition to what Mr. McGuffin is saying, to try to make our classroom or the campus all conducive and clean and be inviting for our students, there is one thing that I'm going to ask today, and I plead for at least an additional $1 million for our school campuses security fence. Security fence is what we need for safety for our school. We all know the massacre that we saw with Uvalde, Texas. It's a small community. It's supposed to be a safe community, but yet that incident happened. So my proposal to this committee is to give us some funds so that we can do electronic fencing of entering and exiting the campus. Right now we have one school that did that, where you need a passcode to get in along with a camera from the office, and that's the only way that you can get in is through passcode or through an intercom saying, "Why are you here?" We really need that for the safety of our kids. A safety fence. It's a school emergency fund. It's not just security fence, but also emergency kits. So we got active shooting drills planned for the upcoming school year. We have Tsunami Drill plans for the shoreline schools. And we don't have any funds for that. We do have a grant, which is the General School Emergency Management Grant, but that grant only allows us to do training, and we've been doing that, and also to put together the logistic operation management for every school. So with that said, I'm seeking your help so that we can try to get that security fence along with the emergency kits as we do our drills. And so that would really help alleviate the anxiety with our parents when they drop off their kids. They know that their child is safe and secured. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. If we can just get a full breakdown of that 1 million, or is it just purely security fence? But if you have other items that fall under that 1 million, if you can provide that to the committee. And that's for all schools in all 3 islands, correct?
Yes. Um, we may have to include Head Start as well because there are 9 Head Start centers in all 3 islands. So that will have to be considered as well. Mm, So yeah, so as you probably read in the paper, we recently did a tsunami drill, and as we came back and looked at, and I was given the report, um, even though there's not much there to spend, but there is fuel that we had to pay for the busing, water for the students at the site where they're supposed to go to. So those are very little things, but we will include that in our school emergency funding.
Thank you. If we can get that by no later than the 17th.
Eesh, really? Okay. Before the
Thank you, Commissioner. And you mentioned something. You mentioned the school shooting and the safety. So let me make that segue into my final question. What I'm sure PSS has received funding for mental health and the well-being of our students. Can you just briefly discuss what are PSS plans, um, especially now that with all that's going on, even to include what's going on in Ukraine and all of that. And then you also mentioned SAMHSA grant, uh, Project Haligi. Yeah. If you can just kind of elaborate more on how that is of helping our students and what that's doing for the school.
Oh, definitely, sir. Even starting this year, we are collecting how many referrals, how many teachers are referring, how many students are being referred, along with how many teachers are also referring themselves for the psychological trauma that we're all facing. And I just wanted to share that more and more, a lot of our CAN, child abuse and neglect reports have been coming up. Um, I don't have the numbers, but I do know that I'm beginning to see, in comparison to last year, that this year it has increased. I'm going to yield to Dr. Bobby Cruz because Dr. Bobby Cruz is also a co director of the SAMHSA grant, and he is more familiar with the mental health and the TASA, Aligi grant activities that they've been doing throughout the year, especially this last school year. So, is it okay if go ahead, Dr. Cruz?
Recognize.
All right. So the PSS mental health team has been awarded approximately $10 million over the next 5 years. And this is about approximately $2 million each year after IDC is about 1.7. And this money is very specific. The charge of the grant is to set in place um, school-based mental health services within a multi-tiered system of support. And so currently, if you look at Title 60, there is no regulatory precedent for school-based mental health services, but the data that we see through the CDC, through our YRBS data, shows us that our students actually are going through, trying to manage and cope with many really just severe and distressing mental health issues. And so, that was when you disaggregate the data and you look at subpopulations, you see that there's a lot of disproportionality also among LGBT groups. And unfortunately, we have our transgender students who also identify as transgender, and that no data is actually collected on them. So you have this data that speaks to the experience of all of our students, but yet no regulatory precedent to be able to provide these much needed services. And so we wrote the grant to be able to combat what we are seeing. And so the hope is that we will put in place this multi-tiered system of support. The tier 1 level is our universal level, and this is supported by the SEL curriculum, our social emotional curriculum, and also an educational campaign to be able to reframe and combat the stigma about mental health. So as a community, we're ashamed to talk about mental health crisis. We're mamalau. And so we really want to change that conversation. We want the kids and the parents to know that, mental health issues are common to every man. And so we want them to know that you have a support system within the school district to help you manage and cope. And then we have our tier 2 services. There's a series of evidence-based programs that we have put in place. We have our Healthy Relationships Plus program, our Grief Recovery program. We also have our Sources of Strength program. And so these are evidence-based programs, and we try to take an upstream approach to supporting our students. So just to talk a little bit about that whole analogy, right? So what has happened in the past is we have people who wait till, and there's a crisis before we come in and we respond. These evidence-based programs say, let's go figure out what's happening to the students before they get downstream, right? When the waters are still calm, let's capture them. Let's give them the tools and techniques to be able to manage all of their emotions. And then we have our tier 3 services, which is one-on-one direct support. So we have a very small team of mental health specialists that are the stewards of all the students that we serve. And so our program has been really busy trying to provide for all the needs, especially given the pandemic. That's all I feel like we've been doing is really just providing, different forms of intervention and support. So since I have this platform, I will say that, as the co-director of the grant, my biggest concern is that we have highly qualified, trained professionals who are doing amazing work. And when the fiscal cliff hits, our hope is that we will have funding enough to be able to retain these highly qualified individuals to provide these life-saving services is what I would call them. And so our goal is to put in place a regulatory precedent within Title 60 to mandate school-based mental health services. But a policy is, a regulation is just that, right? It's just words on a page unless you have the money to be able to sustain these services. So on behalf of our team of 20 mental health specialists, we will look to this body to be able to support some of the needs of the system. And so in terms of the solid numbers that we need, of course, those, I have to look at the personnel budget to, kind of provide some more insight, which we can. But I would just want to put out there that when the grant sunsets, we will have to look at other, look to other spaces to be able to fund these highly qualified individuals.
Thank you for that. What year is this program in right now?
Currently, we just wrapped up year 2 and we're moving into year 3. Also, shameless plug, this among all is a highly competitive grant, and we got the grant, and I would say that we're probably one of the top performing entities. We've been able to do incredible things, and so many other grant recipients have used COVID as an excuse to not meet their grant objective. We have surpassed that.
And just one clarification. You said something about regulations as in terms of mental health services. Is that so? That hasn't really been a focus in PSS, or?
So currently under Title 60 of the admin code, if you go to the regulation, there is no regulatory precedent for the public school system to provide school-based mental health services. One of the things that we hope to do with the support of the commissioner, I mean, he's been a really great supporter, is to put in place that regulatory precedent. And again, that's going to empower us to be able to say, now we need the funding to be able to support this department. And so it's a difficult discussion among all these many competing priorities. But again, I would say that the mental health department, again, provides much needed life-saving services that the data shows are incredibly necessary.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cruz. I know Rep. Sablan has been a champion in regards to behavioral and mental health, as well as Rep. Leila and all of us here. And so that's something that I know she is passionate about, and that's something that we can look in trying to see how we can extend those services to PSS. Especially, now with everything that's going on, as I've mentioned earlier, that's we don't want to wait till it's too late, and so taking the necessary steps now in addressing some of these concerns. That's something that we hope to accomplish. Before we leave here. And so with that, thank you again, Commissioner, and to your entire team, key management, for coming out today. As we've mentioned in previous meetings, it's just unfortunate that we've only been able to meet with Secretary of Finance yesterday. But we were assured that additional funds to the agencies through ARPA allocations will be made in this revised budget submission we are expecting to receive by July 1st. And with a clearer picture of how much those allocations will be, that will help the committee in trying to identify additional funds that we can use through the general fund from other agencies in trying to support some of the requests that PSS has brought forth today. And so with that, if there are any additional questions that we have, I know we are expecting several members had questions in which you weren't able to provide answers to. And so as part of the entire request that I asked that you provide the committee by next Friday, if those can be included to allow for the committee to deliberate on and to consider in finalizing the budget proposal for next fiscal year.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm
yes,
really
Commissioner.
sorry. I don't want to prolong this hearing any longer, but there was actually two requests that I wanted to present to this real quick. So the first one was the emergency school management funds. I already discussed that. The other one is in order for us to sustain the immersion program, I need a $900,000 to hire more instructors. And I know that's already been discussed in the 104. But this is a school request for the immersion program. And the way it works is that a a um a Chamorro teacher teaches at the kindergarten, and then this teacher loops with these students to the first grade, and then the following year they loop to second and then third grade. Our problem, what we're finding out, is that this teacher that was at kindergarten this year loops onto first grade with her students, but I need a replacement for that kindergarten teacher. So that is where we are kind of challenged with, because the teachers that we recruited from fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, we brought them to the kinder, first, second, and third grade teachers teaching Chamorro or Carolinian in vernacular. So that's where I need that.
I'm sorry. Maybe I missed it. This is the first time I'm hearing of a 900-some thousand.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Did we miss that?
So perhaps maybe I can clarify. These were actually those CCLHS immersion positions we mentioned earlier.
So the 900, what figure is that? 900?
It's about a million, so I believe that's what Commissioner was alluding to. It's really to get support to at least those FTEs I mentioned earlier. If not the 103, at least those 26.
26 FTEs for the immersion program.
Yeah, it will support CCLHS immersion.
The only 1 million that I've heard about in an additional request is for the security fence. So there's an additional 1 million that you're asking for?
Yes, so two things. The school emergency system, and then the other one is the CCLHS immersion program.
So that's 1 million needed for the CCLHS immersion program
Yes,
for 26 FTEs.
yes,
And then 1 million for security fence.
yes.
And then, so the 4 million for the 103, is this 103 inclusive of the 26?
That is correct.
So how do I-
So your additional ask today, or at least the priority ask, is the additional 2 million from the 25 million that's already allocated in the budget.
That is correct.
So if we
sir.
can get the breakdown of that 2 million by next Friday, as well as I believe Rep. Sablan, you had some questions weren't answered today based on your, or was that you?
Any breakdown?
If we can get all requests and status updates based on the members' request by next Friday, we'll include that in our deliberations. Okay. All right. I recognize Rep. Sablan.
Thank you. So just to clarify, Commissioner, when you say a teacher loops with the students, you mean like that teacher follows the students to the next grade? And so,
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. That's what the immersion program is, the way it's set up.
mhm.
It all started with, so the ANA grant, we had a grant that piloted this and then it ended. And so now we're trying to continue the program.
Yeah, it's a great program. I wish it had been around when I was in school.
I believe so.
And is it just an immersion program at one of the schools, or are you expanding it now to
To
additional
also,
schools?
this year is the first year that all elementary schools have an immersion class.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
our challenge is recruitment, and we're trying to work with our HR about qualification.
Yeah, and it's for both Chamorro and Carolinian?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Um,
Recognize
Thank
Rep.
you,
Benjamin.
Chair. No, I don't want to sound too patriotic to my brother over there, but are you gonna have a Carolinian in Rhoda also? Carolinian class? Because he's been saying they also want it down there. So thank you.
Yes, the answer is yes. We will open it up for Rhoda and even Tinian. I mean, it's actually open even now. Our problem is finding the teacher. In fact, we may probably have to go back and look at our program, and instead of doing a full day, how about a half day, at least half day session for our, if that's what's, that's all the instructors that I can get. We will, the concept is there, the idea is there, but the reality is finding those teachers. Because and the thing is, we don't want to just recruit anybody off the street. We have to, interview, hire them, and then train them, and also to make sure that they are fit for teaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Redmond. To my Vice Chair.
Sorry, just real quick clarification. So the additional request that you're asking for $1 million for the security fencing, are any of the federal grants or funds that you have received from CARES or ARPA, can they be used to address that? I mean, I am in full support of that initiative, but can any of the federal funds that you have received thus far be used for that?
So to answer the question is partial, yes, partially, but not full. That's why I'm only asking for $1 million. There's 20 campuses across plus 9 Head Start, so that's about 30 campuses altogether. So we've used the one that we have on board right now. If you have a chance to go to William S. Regis WSR in Chalacanoa, you need a passcode to enter in the gate. So, and she also invested, the principal invested in the camera that is connected to the fence and around all campuses. So at one point, one student was missing, and they couldn't find him, but we were able to locate because they were in another classroom. So the camera helped, really did.
So the 1 million, it actually costs more than the 1 million to install the security fencing for all the schools on all 3 islands. And $1 million is what you are asking for the legislature to kind of subsidize or supplement.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I guess we'll know the true figure when you provide the committee with that breakdown as to how much these things will cost. All right. With that, again, thank you, PSS Key Management, for coming in this afternoon. And if you feel like there have been other projects that was not mentioned today, feel free to include that request in it that you'll be submitting next Friday. And so with that, again, thank you all for coming, and you are now excused from today's budget hearing. With that, members, we will take a 5-minute recess. And we move on to the next item on the agenda, miscellaneous. All right, members, thank you for your patience throughout this budget hearing. We still have one agency left tomorrow. As I stated in the beginning, our focus was more on agencies that we've never really had a chance to invite, as well as all the major agencies that from time and time again their expenditures have always been either more than what was appropriated, or it seems like there's additional needs that have not been met in prior years. As we've discussed with Secretary of Finance, it looks like we will be faced with additional challenges in regards to the revised budget submission, in the sense that now we will have to probably move some general fund allocations around in order to address some of the needs. But in of course, keeping in mind the ARPA allocations that were made or will be made. I won't be here tomorrow, but the vice chair will preside. This will be the last budget hearing. If any agencies out there would like to submit any additional requests, or just requests that the committee is not aware of, please submit it to the committee no later than next Friday, so that we can include that in our deliberations when we get the revised budget submission. Any agencies that we've met with and have additional requests or would like to amend their initial requests, I ask that you also please submit that to the committee, so I can share it with the members, and they'll have ample time to review these requests when we come together for deliberations. After tomorrow, we will allow the fiscal analyst and senior LA to work together and put together the skeleton of the budget bill, in which members can include provisions. And so by next Friday, please have some idea, or please have recommendations as to some of the provisions we will need to include in the budget bill. I hope to have a more like a final draft by the end of the month. That way, when we get the revised budget submission, we've already identified areas where we can take from and put into, and so in hopes that we get a final product out by July 7th. And so, again, any recommendations to any of the provisions, as well as department requests, amendments, or additional requests, all that will be due next Friday for those listening to this broadcast. And so with that, would any member like to bring up anything? I recognize Rep. Sablon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to express my appreciation to you for and to the staff for all the hard work that has gone into scheduling these hearings. I do understand that DFEMS is the last in this round of hearings, but I wanted to ask that we consider possibly calling back some agencies, or maybe calling agencies that we haven't heard from yet, such as corrections or even DLNR. Once we get the governor's revised submission, and when we can have a chance to look at like the whole picture of what we've been able to hear and to review so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Sablon. So after the 17th, what I was hoping for other committees to do is hold their meetings next week. All of next week. I know the Ways and Means have taken up a lot of the prior weeks. And so we'll allow for the other committees to schedule their hearings next week to address some of the bills in their committee. And why don't we reserve at least the first 3 days of the week of the 20th to call in any agencies that members feel they would like to bring in and for us to um, consider in addressing. So for now, we'll reserve the 20th to the 23rd for any additional agencies to call in. What's so 21st through the 23rd. Yeah, depending on how many agencies, we'll try to keep it at 2 a day. And so one would be in the morning and then the other one after lunch. So at least just to set aside those days so that depending on what the number is, we can figure out how to squeeze them in. So hopefully agencies next week, or hopefully committees next week, can schedule their committee meetings if they need any bills out. In during the day. Oh, I don't know anything about hosting. Sorry. No, just kidding. Okay, so let's just reserve the ending part, the last 3 days of that week. Um, 22 to 24th. If there are no other major events happening on those days. Is at night? No. Are you performing? Oh. Okay, so we're reserved 23rd to 24th. Members, if you have any recommendations, please refer them or let me know, and I will try to fix a schedule as well as send out these notices to these agencies. And that's why I asked that you do it but let me know by next week, Friday, so that we have ample time to prepare the agenda as well as the notices to these agencies. So JGO and any other committees that have bills that are needing to go up, please take care of them next week. And then, okay, and I believe Rep Babata, you had your hand up earlier.
No, I was just gonna agree with Rep. Tina that we need to call it. And even with the, I wish we could, or I wish we had time to call in the autonomous agencies. DPL is one department that we have not heard from in many, many years. And we have lots of questions for agencies like the Department of Public Lands. And I think even though they do not get any funding from the local appropriations, I do feel that because they have to remit funds to MPLT, that we need to call them in. We are Indigenous and we are beneficiaries of MPLT, and that is a serious concern that hasn't been raised to DPL. So I hope that we have time to call the autonomous agencies after the departments. That's all I had to say.
Well, as soon as I get those numbers in terms of how many more agencies members would like to hear from, then we can see if we have room to schedule them in. Otherwise, this could be a meeting set aside for a time after the budget hearing. But when we get that final number in, we can certainly figure out a schedule. Vice Chair.
I would also like to ask that we invite OPM. Um, it it might be budget related because we, we need to hear from them exactly whether or not those WGIs were affected. From what I was told that there are still complaints coming in. And also the office itself has shared with one of the other legislators that there's still some issues with regards to processing those WGS because of insufficient funds. So I would like to recommend that we call them in and hear their side of the story so that we can make sure that we allocate those funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yes, that's certainly an agency that we can call in. Any other member? Recognize Rep. Yanktamai, the Tahitian dance.
No, no, thank you, Chair. No, what about Fish and Wildlife?
Yeah,
Bill.
DLNR. So Rep.
Yes.
I think Rep. Sablan recommended that also. So
DLNR, because there's an important bill that um, involves fish and wildlife. Fish and wildlife, DLNR. Yes. Yes, no?
oh yes, that was one of the recommendations
Oh.
that Rep. Sablan
Yeah,
mentioned.
okay,
DLNR.
thank you.
But I won't act on it until I get official communication from you guys through WhatsApp or email. So, huh? Thank you, Rep. Yanktamai, for your thoughtfulness. Okay. Any other member?
Nothing further.
Okay. Yes. That's all I have for today. If I know of any updates, I will relay it to the vice chair so that she can relay it tomorrow. And so, one last announcement.
Can we just get a show of hands of who will be here tomorrow so we can make sure we have a quorum? 10 o'clock. You can just call in real quick just so that we can, or, right? We can do that, right? We can
It's the
just,
same thing I told Rep. Patrick too. If we need the Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair. And at this time, can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All right. Motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned at 4:05 p.m.